If you enjoy playing Kenshi as much as I do, please like and subscribe. I'll continue posting videos with tips, tricks, and information about the game, as well as simply sharing my playthrough. Welcome back to another Kenshi playthrough video. In this video, I'm going to talk about weaponsmithing specifically, because this is something that I found very confusing when I was first playing. Not very confusing, but it was a little unclear to me until I played for a while, and then I was like, oh, okay, I understand now. So I'll just try to clarify it for you so you don't have to be confused about it and understand how it works, because it's not super complicated, but it does function differently than the rest of the other smithing, like armor crafting and um, crossbow crafting. Those are pretty straightforward. Basically, you need the bench to do it, and then you just need to get good at it, and you make better and better stuff. Weaponsmithing works the same way, but there's a little bit more involved in it. So there's five things you need to keep in mind when it comes to weaponsmithing. So the first thing is that you're going to need to research the technology to smith the weapons. Now, we'll come back to that in a minute and talk about it a little bit more because there's other things involved with it related to the research of the tech. The next thing you're going to need once you research the tech is obviously you're going to, like everything else, you're going to need to build the crafting station or the weaponsmith to make the weapons at. And there's a little bit involved with understanding how that works as well. The third thing is you're going to need to research weapons grade tech. So if you don't understand what the different weapons grades are, I suggest you go watch my video where I talk about weapons grades and try to give you an understanding of what they are. They're pretty straightforward, but they will impact and help you understand weapons smithing if you understand what all those weapons grades are. And keep in mind you're going to need technology, not just to craft the weapons, but technology to craft different higher grades of weapons. The fourth thing you're going to need is going to be blueprints. So I've talked about blueprints before in other videos, but just know that in order to craft anything, for instance, a katana, you're going to need to purchase or steal, but somehow acquire the blueprint for an katana and then research it. Now, once you researched it, any character researches it, doesn't matter who it is, then your whole faction knows how to make that item, and it'll then appear in your crafting menu when you go into the crafting menu. So these are all items that I've had the blueprints and research for. So that's the fourth thing. And then the last thing, of course, that's going to affect your smithing ability or crafting ability of your weapons, just like everything else in the game, is going to be your stat. So it's your weaponsmith stat under trades. And this will, if you go mouse over it, it'll tell you the grade of weapon that your character is now a bit of capable of crafting. Now, this is a great example. I'm going to mention it real quick because this is something to remember. Um, and it'll become more clear why in a minute. But your weaponsmithing skill not only requires your stat, and this is for all smithing, for armor and anything else as well. It's also going to be affected by your health. So this guy right now, I just noticed this, so I thought I would mention it. He's hurt. So right now, if I told him to go smith, he has a very high weaponsmith skill. He can make very good weapons. But if he goes to make it right now, his weaponsmithing skill is down to cat number two. He's at edge walkers or edge type two right now, which is pretty much the highest you can get to. But he can't craft that because he's injured. So he's going to craft crappier weapons. Anyways, that's one factor that will affect the outcome of what you're crafting to keep in mind. So you want to keep your smiths healthy, especially while you have them assigned to craft things in game. Okay, so let's go back a little bit and talk about technology research for weapons crafting. So you're going to have to research three separate weapons crafting smiths, I guess, or different types of smithing. The first one's just going to be basic, and then there's an advanced, and then there's another advanced. I don't remember what it's called, but just keep in mind there's three tiers of weapons crafting that you need to research. So you have to get that research done first of all. In addition to that, you will have research for weapons grades. And a good example of that is going to be Of course, I have no one over there right now. Come over here, buddy. Let's go in that building. But you're going to need to research the weapons grades for each of the different types of weapons grades. That's another technology you're going to research. So under smithing, this is where you'll research the different uh, weapons crafting, basic, advanced, and advanced 2.0. I don't know what it's called. I can't remember. But you also need to research the weapons grade technology. So right now you can see he's hurt right now, but he has the ability to actually make Edge Type 2, which is the highest level. But I haven't even researched Edge Type 1 yet, so I can't. I can, and I'll talk about that in a sec. And I can with a critical success chance, but we don't have the technology as a faction to create Edge Type 1 weapons. We only have up through Mark 3 at the moment. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to the benches, you'll see here I have Weaponsmith 1, Weaponsmith 2, and Weaponsmith 3. The other thing to keep in mind, and this will all come clearer in a second, I think, is that Weaponsmith 1, you'll see it only requires iron plates to craft weapons. Weaponsmith 2 is going to require iron plates and fabric, and Weaponsmith 3 is going to require steel bars and fabric. So you need more resources or more harder to manufacture resources potentially to make the highest level uh, weapons because you'll need steel bars to make the higher level weapons. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, this is where it gets a little bit more confusing. You need like I mentioned, you need the technology for the weapons grades. On this bench particularly, I can only make up to a refitted blade. So if I assign a character with no weapon skill whatsoever, they're going to make rusted junk first until they get up to a point where they can make refitted blades, and then they can just reliably make me refitted blades on this weapon bench. On the on the same note, I could tell the same character to come over to my Weaponsmith 3 bench and manufacture Mark 3 weapons. However, if they have zero skill or very low skill, they're only going to manufacture a weapon that's equal to their skill level. So they have access to a bench that has the capabilities of manufacturing better weapons, but the output that they're going to create is only going to be at best the equivalent of their skill level. So if I tell him to make Mark 3, but he only has the ability to make, say, a mid-grade salvage, I'm going to waste steel bars and fabric having to make a mid-grade salvage blade, whereas I could have just told them to go use the first weaponsmith. So that's just something to point out because you can't upgrade your weaponsmith, but you might want to keep around your old weaponsmith in your base so you can tell newer characters or apprentice weaponsmith to go learn how to make good weapons just using up your iron plates and not wasting your steel bars and fabric. Just something to keep in mind. So I think that's pretty much it. The other thing to keep in mind as you go up in grade of weaponsmith, you'll see that on weaponsmith 2, I do have the ability to assign a character the ability to create a refitted blade or a cat number 3 blade. So I could say cat number 3 and he could craft that. But if he only has refitted ability to make refitted blade, that's all they're going to make. Or cat number 1 or 2, for instance, which is fine. The other thing to keep in mind is that let's tell this guy to go weaponsmith over here, and he'll go make something. We'll tell him to go make we'll just say a horse chopper, just because it doesn't really matter what he makes, and we'll see when he gets over there. But basically, he has a very high skill. He's hurt right now, so he can't make the best weapon he can. But on a refitted blade on this bench, he's probably going to make a cat number 1 blade because his skill is so high. He can make one grade better than his uh, either his skill, he has a critical success chance of making it, or the bench is capable of making, or the technology you have researched. So think of those three things kind of in conjunction with each other. You have to have the skill, the technology, and the weapons bench to craft it. But if you have all three of the things, like you can always craft one blade better than what you have the technology, skill, or um, technology, skill, or bench for. Is that if that makes sense? So, for instance, you can see here that I have a long sword. You can see under model number Edge Type 1, it says crafted by Cow Cow. that blade he crafted, even though at an Edge Type 1 grade, even though we only have Mark III technology for weapons grades, because he's so good at crafting weapons, he was able to he was successful at making one grade better than we have the technology for. So we do have the highest level bench, but keep in mind on the low level weapons crafting bench one, you could potentially, if you have a high enough skill, start crafting Keton number ones. And then on the second level bench, you could get up to where you're able to critically successfully craft Mark One weapons. And then if you don't have the technology left yet, like I do or don't on the weapons crafting bench three, you can potentially craft Edge Type One weapons still with a critical success chance. I'll see if this shows. Yeah, you'll see that here. It'll even say down underneath the ATA on the right at the bottom here, it says critical success chance 23%. So right now he has a 23% chance of creating not a refitted blade, but a Caton number one blade. So I hope that clarifies that. I know it's a little confusing, a lot of information probably to absorb, but those are the things you need to keep in mind. You need your technology for crafting, and there's three levels of that to acquire. You need to build the correct bench to be able to craft that level weapon. You need the weapons grade technology research to make a specific grade of weapon. So even though you have the bench, you also need the technology. Now, I say that another thing, this will be to clarify a bit. If I didn't have the cat number three here, I think I would still it would give me cat number one as an option if I hadn't researched the technology. That's basically what the technology will unlock for me. And a good example of that would be on my weapons smith three. I have katana mark threes I can make, but once I research edge walkers, I'll have the ability to create edge type one. It'll show up here in my menu on my crafting menu. So I hope that clarifies it and was clear enough. Um, those are all the things you need to keep in mind. You're going to need technology, the bench to build it. You're going to need the weapons grade technology. You're going to need blueprints to make the specific thing, and then your smith's skill and his health will affect the grade of weapon that he's able to craft.